Hello and welcome back to the Prosperity by Design podcast. I'm your host, Fallon, and today I want to talk to you about stories. I was actually listening to a podcast episode earlier this morning that kind of just lit up my brain in terms of this particular episode that I want to create. And so I want to dive into stories today. However, as a side note, before we get into the whole stories bit, one thing that I want to encourage you to do in your content is to build off of content that other people create and publish and put out there, because that's essentially what's happening today. I was listening to a podcast episode about budgeting and finance, personal finance, business finance, and they were talking about like, oh yeah, if I want to take a trip with my family, there are going to be some instances where it's okay for me to put it on my credit card. But in other instances, it's not going to be okay because I'm working so hard in this many different kinds of businesses, and I know my numbers and I know my limits and I know my boundaries, and therefore it's really important to not make it a habit to put that trip on a credit card. So it lit up my brain because there was a coach who I had hired back in 2020 who shares this story about how she spent $8,000 on a coach so that she could start to get mentorship and she could start to build her business learning from this coach. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because obviously their podcast kind of is helping me to open and expand the dialogue in a different way, right? So like we started with personal finance and now we're going into storytelling. And so it's just a side note that I would encourage you to use when you go to create your own content, that you expand upon the dialogue that people are currently putting out there in their content, whether it's podcasts, whether it's an Instagram post, whether it's TikTok, whatever. Like, share your perspective, share your experience, and like build on the content, like respond to the content that's already out there and share like an experience or a story that you have about it. So without further ado, let's get into the whole storytelling bit. Now, like I had mentioned earlier, this coach had spent a significant portion of money on a coach herself in the past. And it was around $8,000, and she put it on a credit card and she didn't tell her husband. Okay, that's a story that she shares in her content. She's shared before, and it's like she's proud to talk about spending $8,000 that she didn't have on a credit card, and she didn't know if building this business was going to work. And, sharing this story does a variety of things, and I want to go over each one. First of all, when this person is sharing that story, she's calling in other people who are going to do the same thing, or she's calling in people who she would want to also do the same thing. So, like, obviously, I had shared earlier on that I did invest in her in 2020, and what did I do? How do you think I did it? I put it all on a credit card, and I had no knowing of whether or not what I was going to be building was going to work out or not. Did I build anything out of taking her program? No. Did I sell anything out of taking her program? No. Was I profitable, or did I generate any sales after taking her program? No. Would I say that taking that risk was worth the reward? Absolutely not. I would say that was called fake marketing, but that's a different story for a different day. But the idea is she's calling in people who are going to take similar behaviors because she's sharing a story of her own behavior and how she would want to see other people behave. Now, this kind of ties in with the second point here, which is stories highlight or put a spotlight on your values. All right. Now, she, by sharing this story, is sharing with her audience, whether they're on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, whatever, YouTube, that she values risk. So the idea is that through this story, like the ultimate reason why she's sharing this story is because when you risk something to build a profitable business, you get a reward. Now, the thing is that is not set in stone. That ideology is not set in stone, because what is the statistic that everybody talks about when you're on Instagram or when you're part of their masterclass or whatever? That 80% of businesses fail in the first 5 years of being open. Like only 20% of the businesses who open doors make it after 5 years. So when you use this story as like, hey, I took a risk and I got this massive reward, she's using this on purpose. She's trying to line up with the values of people who are looking for that immediate reward. And the thing is that the statistics are against it. Like the statistics actually prove otherwise. Even though she uses those statistics to her benefit at some point, she talks about it in her masterclass, she talks about her business, in her content. She says, in the first 5 years, 80% of businesses don't make it. You want to be one of the 20%, you got to join my program, right? Like she's using it for her marketing. But the idea is that through this story that, she spent $8,000 on a credit card and she didn't tell her husband. One, she is showing that she values taking risks, but also two, she is telling us that she values secrecy. She values not being transparent. She values not being upfront and honest with her partner. And I think that speaks volumes in terms of not just like their personal relationship, but even in terms of business. Like if you're a business owner and you're not even telling your partner the money that you spent, on your credit card in your marriage, what if I wanted to do business with you? What are you going to keep from me as your customer or as your partner? Like through that story, you are sharing, you are giving so much insight into yourself and into how you're treating other people, how you have relationships with other people. And that story is going to be the anchor for what is going to happen in your world moving forward. Like we don't realize how sticky stories are until the stories stick in your head. And obviously this one story, I have not purchased anything from this person in 4 years. I, to be quite honest and frank about it, do not align with this person. And in all honesty, while I think that it's great to share these kinds of stories, and if that's the type of person that you align with, that's fine and that's dandy. Whatever works for you is what's going to work for you. But I think it really just sheds light on how important it is that you really think about and you share the stories of you and your values, and you share with people who you really are and what it really means to be in your world. Because to me, when you hear a story like that, that means to me that like I am going to challenge you and I'm going to push you to your limits of being able to spend, because the reward is going to far outweigh whatever the cost is that's associated with it. And like there are people who are, I just think of like investments, okay? Like there are people who are very, very risky with their investments, and that's fine. That's great if you want to, make your investments that way. But there are a lot of people who are very conservative with their investments, and that's not how they want to do their investments. So like, obviously, in all honesty, it really just comes down to finding who it is that you align with and who it is that is going to be someone that you have similar values with, like it's just like in a relationship. When you're entering a relationship, it's pointless and you're going to find that the relationship isn't going to last long if you don't have some shared values or some common thread between each other. And when you have shared values, the more shared values you have, the better the relationship is going to be. So it's just something to consider and to think about, because your stories are literally reflecting every single value and perspective that you hold, every belief that you hold. And that's crazy important, because those are going to be people who you bring into your world. Those are going to be people that you attract into your world, okay? Like everybody wants to talk about attraction marketing, and everyone wants to talk about, like pain point marketing, and this is how you're going to attract people into your audience. And the thing is that when you hit on people's pain points, all you're going to do is make them feel in lack that much more than where they are now. And when you hit on people's pain points like that, yeah, okay, they're going to want to get over it, and they're going to want to, find a solution for it. But really, the reason why people stick around is because they see a part of themselves in you. They relate to you. They relate to what it is that you value. They relate to what it is that you have to share, right? Like, one of my favorite production companies ever, like, I love everything that they produce. Well, maybe not everything. I take that back. But a very good majority of what they produce is Marvel. And really what it comes down to with Marvel is the storytelling. And stories are that impactful that they make people remember things, right? Like, literally yesterday, I saw something about how Loki is soon to be the god of stories instead of the god of mischief, and he was introduced as a god of mischief, and here's how he's developing into his role as the god of stories. And like, to me, that character development is synonymous with my business development. And I see Loki, I see myself in Loki, and I feel that stories are really that important, and stories are what bring people together. And like, another thing that I even thought of this week is like Iron Man, okay? And like in Iron Man, one of the really particular scenes, like the actual, like, it set the tone for the movie, is when Tony Stark, Robert Downey Jr. playing Tony Stark, was in the cave, and he was like banging together. He was like, I don't know if you call it smelting, I don't know what you call it, but he was like banging the hammer on iron plates to make the very first edition of the Iron Man suit, and he was forging the iron to make this suit. And I was talking to someone earlier this week about how what my like purpose really is to forge my own path. And like, the two people who pop up for me are Tony Stark and Loki, because it's about the stories that I have and how I'm forging my own path, and I'm forging my own suit, my own Iron Man suit, with the stories that bring my people, my family, my friends together. And that is so vivid. That has a lot of pictures and a lot of scenes and a lot of, different things that come to your mind through that story that I just shared about this week alone. But like, there's a reason why Marvel makes so much goddamn money, okay? Like, there's a reason why these movies and these Disney Plus shows do so well. There's a reason why that many people tune in to watch, and that many sales in the billions ticket sales are made for the Marvel's Avengers movies, because of the storyline that comes with those movies. It is all about that. And even if you were to look at Shang-Chi, like another Marvel movie, granted, it's not Iron Man, it's not Thor, it's not Loki, it's not Captain America, it's not Miss Marvel, it's not any of the ones that we're familiar with, okay? Doctor Strange, but it is still enough that people recognize it, and they're like, I want to know more. Like, I want to hear the story about it. So stories really, truly are that important. They are that important. And I really didn't think much of it at the start, but now I realize that you don't have to have this like long-winded, super saturated story, because people don't relate necessarily to that. But you do have to have your story, and you do have to have specific things that come up in your mind, just like how I shared with you about this past week when Loki and Tony like both showed up in my mind, and how it's been relating to my development in this business recently. And I wanted to share that in today's episode, because whether you know it or not, your stories, every single one of them is very important, and every single one of them has the platform and deserves to be shared. You just have to be vulnerable enough and open enough to share them and to start sharing them. And I have so much to say about figuring out content pillars and how storytelling plays in with this, but I want to kind of do it in a different episode, because I feel like this one is definitely starting to get a little away from me right now. But just know that whatever stories that you have, what I would recommend for you to do is to start outlining them. Like, literally just start making a list of the stories that you've acquired in the past however long, like since the start of your business, since the start of this journey for you, whatever it might look like. Start to compile all of those stories together. And what you're going to do is keep that with you for the next episode, because in the next episode, I'm going to talk to you about how I have been using those stories that I have to help me with my content and to help me with how I'm going to forge my own path moving forward in my business. So definitely be sure to just write those out, keep them on a piece of paper, and then save it for next week or Thursday. It depends on when the next episode after this, well, when this one's going to be released and the next one is going to be published after this. But just know that these 2 episodes, this is like part 1, storytelling part 1, and the next one, it'll be storytelling part 2. They work together, okay? I want to thank you for tuning in today. This one was a little bit longer than a lot of my, episodes have been recently, but I really do appreciate all of your time listening, and I appreciate every share that you post and every takeaway that you have. And if you've had any takeaways, please be sure to post them on Instagram and to tag me. And if you have not yet left a rating, please, please, please leave a review. I would so greatly appreciate it. It literally takes 5 seconds, maybe a minute tops, and it really does help the podcast get played up more in the Apple or Spotify algorithm so that it can get recommended to new audiences and newer people. So thank you for tuning in. Please don't forget to leave a review, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye.